It was the 16th of April 2020 when Tony Maaz logged onto the online auction site Ironplanet with the intention of purchasing a second-hand excavator. The Orange Doosan DX420 was worth around 100,000 Australian dollars. Despite it being listed online with a starting price of $165,000, Maaz bid $280,000, more than double what it was worth. But he wasn't done there. When he noticed that there were a few other potential buyers viewing the listing, he then upped the bid despite being informed he would probably win the auction. It was odd behaviour to anyone on the outside that wasn't aware of the man's sinister intentions. The unit was not being procured for its traditional use. An almost ingenious plot had been hatched between two organised crime groups, one in the United Kingdom and the other in Australia, to traffic over half a ton of MDMA across the world hidden inside the machine. But who was the instigator of this master plan, and what was the motivation? The answer will probably surprise you. You are watching OCG TV. The UK-based crime group that were responsible for sending the drugs were of a similar demographic. The men were all over between 45 and 60 years old and primarily based in Essex in the southeast of England. They arranged to buy the excavator, a Doosan DX420, for €75,000 and planned with their Australian counterparts to create a false sale via an internet auction site. They rigged the auction by agreeing a pre-arranged bid with the intended recipients. However, the digger started to gain some traction online with a number of other potential buyers. OCG member Leon Riley was concerned and messaged accomplice Danny Brown on his EncroChat phone. "There are 6 people watching it." Brown replied, "Effing hell, that's not good, is it?" Riley arranged for the digger to be moved from Leeds to Essex by his company Maaz Equipment. The digger was housed in an industrial unit in Grays, Essex, and another gang member, Tony Borg, took delivery of the machine at the unit and worked on it. Another man, Philip Lawson, designed the hide and arranged a welder to cut open an arm of the digger and seal 227 packages of MDMA behind a lead lining. Lawson had bought a powerful welding machine and arranged for a sign-making company to make some stickers to cover the markings once it had been repainted. Maaz Equipment then paid a haulage firm £1,600 to move the digger to Southampton docks, and it took from January 14th to March 13th to arrive in Brisbane. When the consignment arrived in Australia, Border Force officers x-rayed the digger and removed the drugs. They then sealed the arm and installed a tracker and listening device before allowing it to go to its intended destination, an auction house in Sydney. Riley exchanged numerous encrypted EncroChat messages with Brown and Baldo to update them on the machine's progress and passage through Australia. The digger was then delivered to a site on Kildare Road, Blacktown, 34 kilometres west of Sydney, where it was received by construction worker Tony Maaz. It was then left there for 12 days unattended while a plan was made for extraction. Lawson had provided Maaz and his associate, a plumber, Raymond Lipovac, a detailed diagram showing where the MDMA was hidden and what tools would be needed to access the drugs. Investigating police were watching on May 18th when Maaz arrived at the Blacktown site and used the excavator to dig a trench. He then put the piece of machinery in the trench before obstructing the view from the street with a large piece of fabric. They cut open part of the machine with a drill and angle grinder and were greeted with an empty and hollow machine. Police were listening on when Maaz directed Lipovac to call them to find out where it is and to take photos so they can have a look at it. The pair gave up and returned to the site on May 19th and 20th for a second unsuccessful attempt before a third try failed on May 21st. Struggling to find the packages, the men responded with a picture of a hollow arm and told Brown the machine was empty. Brown and his accomplices provided even more detailed explanations of where the drugs were concealed, but it soon dawned on the group that they had been removed. EncroChat messages show the 6 UK-based men launched their own investigation and held meetings to find out who had stolen the drugs. The anxiety must have been palpable, as both groups waited tensely to figure out if they were indeed robbed or had been rumbled by authorities. They didn't need to wait long to be put out of their misery. And the arrests soon began. Danny Brown and German national Stefan Boldorf were arrested in Putney a month later. Then, Peter Murray was picked up by the NCA outside of his home in Greenwich on the 1st of October. It wasn't widely reported as to what Murray's role had been, but he had a major role to play, as evidenced by his eventual sentence. Demonstrating the use of the EncroChat phones was crucial to proving the case against Brown and Boldorf. They had sent accidental selfies of themselves on the app, which gave investigators additional proof they were involved in the plan. In one message, Brown sent a photo to his crime group of his television, which showed his reflection in it. The prosecution was able to link Brown to his EncroChat phone through a picture of his French bulldog, Bob, which he sent to one of the other gang members. The dog had the same name on his collar that he had been sending messages on. Boldorf sent a photo of his location, which accidentally captured his own reflection on his way to meet Brown, which was used to prove he had control of the device. Further investigations led to the arrest of the remaining members of the group. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it took over 2 years for the case to come to court. On the 6th of December 2022 at Kingston upon Thames Crown Court, the crew was sentenced for conspiracy to export Class A narcotics. The sentences provided were significant and perhaps reflected the suggestion that the group were successful on previous occasions. Stefan Boldorf was sentenced to 28 years imprisonment. Danny Brown received 26 years. Philip Lawson, 23 years. Tony Borg, 15 years. Peter Murray, 24 years. And Leon Riley was sentenced to 24 years. The last member of the UK arm of the group was finally sentenced in December of 2024. William Sartin, 63 years old, had previous for serious organised crime. His criminal history includes a 2000 conviction for attempting to smuggle 480 kilograms of cannabis from the Netherlands, concealed in scrap metal. In 2011, he was also convicted of conspiracy to cheat public revenue through tobacco and tobacco machinery smuggling. This was reflected in his sentence, getting a lofty 24 years for his role, which was to provide the warehouse in Grays where the excavator was prepared for shipping. The Australians, on the other hand, were dealt a better hand by their courts, even though their excuses received mixed reactions. Tony Maaz maintained the purchase of the 42-ton digger was in good faith, and he had no knowledge of illicit contents prior to it arriving in Blacktown. During his trial, he told the court he was threatened into helping to look for the drugs by his accomplice, Lipovac. He claimed Lipovac threatened to shoot both him and his mother if he did not assist. Maaz was eventually sentenced to 8 years jail with a non-parole period of 5 years. He will be eligible for release in February 2029. Lipovac claimed he was forced to get involved because his dead brother owed $1 million to a biker gang. He explained to Sydney District Court that he knew his brother had links to the unnamed outlaw motorcycle gang when he died in a 2009 motorbike crash. He stated that shortly after the funeral, he was approached by a senior member of the gang who said a significant debt owed by his brother to the organisation would still have to be paid. Lipovac told the court this included completing jobs for the gang that included holding significant amounts of illegally obtained cash and eventually put him on the path to smuggling MDMA. He said he initially refused to be involved in drugs crimes for the gang, but agreed to count and hold money. After 7 years, he had paid off $1 million of his brother's debts and had a small portion left to pay. But in 2016, there was a change in the OCG's leadership and the new leader was less lenient. During his first meeting with the new leader, he was allegedly manhandled and threatened that if he did not follow their instructions to complete a task, they would take his car and anything else they wanted. That task was to cut MDMA out of an excavator that would be imported into Australia on March 13, 2020 from the United Kingdom. The judge accepted the explanation in the Sydney District Court when he sentenced Lipovac to a minimum 4 years jail. In the end, the story of this ill-fated smuggling operation serves as a cautionary tale about the harsh realities of high-stakes crime. Australia's strict border controls, advanced surveillance systems, and harsh penalties for drug trafficking made smuggling half a ton of MDMA not just ambitious, but extremely reckless. This case reminds us that in the world of organised crime, the risks often outweigh the rewards. For every headline-grabbing bust, there are lives destroyed, not just those of the traffickers, but also the countless people affected by the drugs themselves. As we've seen, attempting to exploit Australia's lucrative drug market can end in disaster, proving once again that crime doesn't pay, no matter how grand the scheme. Thanks for watching another episode of OCG TV. Till next time.